and welcome to the Zoli Mamza podcast with Magali
and Hansini, where we have thought-provoking conversations about journeys, life, and much more. Catch our latest episodes every Monday.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy.
Hello, good morning, everyone. We hope you're all doing really well. Today, we're joined by our lovely guest, Nadia, who's the founder of the amazing page, Satini Coco. So welcome, Nadia. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. How are you both?
Yeah, good, thank you. Besides the bad weather, but you know, what can you do?
It's gloomy, we move. Yeah. So Nadia, give us a bit of intro about yourself and about the page, how it came up, and just, yeah.
So my name is Nadia, and like you said, I'm the founder of Satini Coco. I work in advertising full time, and then about a year ago, I decided to start this page. I kind of didn't really know what would happen with it and where it would go and what it would include, but so far it's gone really well. And yeah, that's about it really. It's just a page to showcase kind of Mauritian culture and a bit of education and news at the same time.
That was the perfect intro, to be fair.
How did the name come about? Like, how did you decide? For those who don't know, Satini Coco means coconut chutney. So yeah. How did that name come up?
So I wanted something kind of quintessentially Mauritian that Mauritians would recognise. Mm-hmm. And then I was playing around with a name that would involve a dodo, because obviously that's the most Mauritian thing out there. But you know what? All the dodo names are taken, and like all the funny ones are gone. So I don't know, it just kind of, it's something that sounded cool and quirky, Mauritian and fun. So I just stuck with it. And
I loved it.
Yeah. No, it's perfect, because literally just hearing the word itself, it just takes you back. And you're right, like Dodo is just used everywhere now.
I think the name is kind of, like you said, with Dodo, it's very like what people know of us, but Satini Coco is very much like in everyone's home. Yeah. It's like a homely thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a little pot in the back of the food.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a bouillon poisson. Oh man. Nothing.
Yeah, I could be the backup name, bouillon poisson.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to start the page, and how do you juggle between your work and running the page? Because there's a lot of content that goes up, and from what I've seen, it's a lot of well-researched content. How do you juggle both?
So I'll start with how I started the page. I always kind of knew it was something I wanted to do, but I didn't know quite how to go about it or what it would include. And I remember like kind of last year with everything that happened with COVID and everything around like Black Lives Matter, there were loads of things going up. And also kind of, you know, there's loads of like Desi meme pages and meme pages about specific cultures. And like the Indian meme pages and the Desi meme pages are great and you can relate to them, but not 100%, because kind of as Mauritians, we have our own culture.
Yeah.
As Mauritians who are born and raised and brought up outside Mauritius, we have another culture within that. So I kind of just wanted to create something that encompassed that for Mauritians and kind of make it a safe space, as you wish. But I kind of didn't know, like, should I just make it a funny page? Should I make it an educational page? So I kind of just put everything out there and just to see what sticks. And so far it's doing pretty well. And then the kind of like news and infographics, I wanted to make sure to include some of that culture, because I feel like sometimes as Mauritians abroad, we can be a bit out of touch with it, especially if you don't speak French, because a lot of Mauritian news is in French. So as you school, you do like 1 hour of French a week, if that. So that's not enough to get you to that level to be able to fully understand it. So Satini Coco is kind of like a bridge between that to make it, you know, easily accessible and easily digestible. And then in terms of juggling it, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard work. It is hard work. So obviously I work full time. So in terms of researching the pieces, that does take quite a bit of time, because the last thing I want to do is put any like crap or rubbish out there. So I try to make sure everything I do is well researched. I always put sources. It's a job in itself trying to get the information and then trying to distill it down into 5 or 6 slides to put on Instagram. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's working somehow.
What you said about the bridge between when you're abroad, it's really hard to keep in touch with news, because I personally feel like since I've grown up here, I try to read the news to try to be aware of what's going on in Mauritius. But like you said, it's really difficult, and you also feel so out of touch. So I think it's so great that it's so accessible, because sometimes you do feel a bit bad, like you don't really know what's going on. We enjoy all the good side of Mauritius, but we don't actually know the situations are like. So I think your page has done that so well. It's really digestible. Like,
Thank you.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, a lot of the stuff that I've learned was from your page, like recent. Yeah, like,
That's
because
good
I
to
don't
hear.
really
That's the aim of it. Yeah. If one person like you guys can say that they've learned something, then I'm happy. But it's hard work, because I feel like with Mauritian news, it's not like news here where you've got so many sources. With Mauritian news, it's like 2 or 3 outlets of news, and then if one contradicts the other one, then it's like, well, which one's telling the truth? And then I find Mauritian news as well that a lot of it kind of pre-assumes information, so then I can back and back to try and find out before you know it, in a kind of wormhole of information. So it can be a bit difficult sometimes, but the whole point of it is to kind of give the top line information and then encourage people, if they want to kind of do more research about it.
That's what I like as well. Like, you always say, like, do your own research, and like you put out there, you basically you're just honest and genuine about what you're showing and what you're like. Yeah, you don't really put your opinions out there. It's just like
That's the thing.
facts.
Of course,
And
I have
then,
my opinions, but yeah, I want to try to remain impartial, and then people can make their own opinions and judge about what they read.
yeah.
is it quite easy, Nadia, to stay impartial, or do you find that you have to hold yourself back or anything like that?
I do hold myself back, I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
Especially on certain topics, I do hold myself back, and I'm sure everyone knows as well, we know what's going on, we're not stupid, but there's certain things that you can't say, not that you can't say, but again, I just want people to kind of make their own judgments about it, do their own research and just think about it for themselves and not just be spoon-fed information. I know in the day and age of the internet, it's easy just to read something and take it for gospel. But especially, I don't know, I think when it comes to our country as well, just a little bit more effort to try and understand it a bit better. So that's why I do try and just make it as top line as possible, and then people can take from that what they wish.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I know you're really passionate about, or you've spoken a lot about on your page, is the Chagos Island. So how did you come across the story of the Chagos Island, or the history of the Chagos Island, and how do you go about posting your content on it?
So posting about Chagos is really hard, because I think for Mauritian culture in general, and then especially on the Chagos, there's just not a lot on it. Like a lot of our culture has been erased or reduced to certain things like slavery or indentured labours or sugarcane or whatever. So for the Chagos, it's even less. So trying to get hold of resources is quite difficult, I won't lie. But I only found out about the Chagos Islands when I lived in Mauritius. So considering, we go to Mauritius every year on holiday for 2 weeks, or we know loads of Mauritian people, I'd never ever once heard of it until I actually lived on the island, and I started speaking to loads of different people or reading news and kind of just getting a better understanding of what's going on. So for those who kind of don't know, Mauritius is not just Mauritius Island, it's made up of other territories. So there's St. Brandon, Rodrigue, Agalega, and this also used to include the Chagos Islands. So when Mauritius was kind of under colonial rule from the British. And as Mauritius was fighting for independence, the British saw this as a kind of opportunity to annex the Chagos Islands as part of a kind of greater strategy for military bases around the world with the US. So to cut a very long story short, they forcibly exiled Chagosians to Mauritius and Seychelles, and they now live in extreme poverty. They haven't been paid compensation, or haven't been paid all their promised compensation. And there's a giant military base on Diego Garcia, which is the main island in the Chagos. And there's been loads of kind of court appeals and court junctions where the British have been told to decolonise Chagos, because it is modern day colonisation. They've been told to decolonise and hand the islands back to Mauritius, which is another issue in itself, because do Chagosians still want to be part of Mauritius? Do they want to be kind of their own nation? So that's a whole other story that we need to think about. So that's the main kind of background behind it. So I feel like as modern day Mauritians, not a lot of us know about that. If I think of my kind of Mauritian friends who have also grown up here, it's not something that's ever spoken about on the news, or it's like a little tiny corner in a website somewhere. So I think it's just really important to raise awareness of that.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, you're right. Like because I grew up in Mauritius, was born there, and I only heard about it. Like, I didn't actually know what it was until I came here, and sort of my parents told me the story. And with that, I was like, what can you do? Like, you just feel helpless, because it's like those people, and we actually have a Mauritian friend who was from the Chagos Islands.
Really?
Yeah.
Is your friend kind of like a second or third generation, or?
I think like a third generation, because she moved here because she was living in Mauritius actually, and then moved here as well. So even she doesn't know like her history and how, you know, what happened and stuff like that. So it's like,
well, that's the thing, because it's probably like her grandparents or great grandparents who would know, and then when they sadly pass away, that history kind of gets lost because it's not really
yeah, exactly. And it's not until sort of, because it's been in the news recently, and then sort of like you covered it and I've read up on it, but other than that, like it's not like talked about in Mauritius enough. And it's like there's a lot of like hidden knowledge or like hidden information, and it's just like, why? But it's because it's just not talked about and not looked into.
Yeah, and the whole thing is quite secretive anyway. I mean, annexing Chagos was kind of a secret deal made by the US and the UK.
Yeah.
And then no one kind of knows what goes on the island anyway. Like, they know it's a military base, but what actually happens, no press can go. Obviously, Chagosians can't even go, so no press can go. You need permits or whatever to be able to sail nearby. So it's all very undercover.
Yeah, I actually came across the story when I was probably like in my teens. My dad just mentioned it, and I remember watching a documentary. I think there's a famous English documentary about it, which I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it was like, you know, when you're young, you just Google everything. I watched the documentary, and it was just crazy to me how they were just exiled from their own island because 13-year-old me was just thinking, imagine if I couldn't go back to Mauritius ever. Like it just hit me so hard. And the thing that hit me so much was, it's not like old history. This is like recent. This is like 50 years.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's the maddest thing about it. It's not even old.
Yeah, and I was just thinking the only reason like the British government was able to do it is because there's like only a few, like it wasn't a big population, but even then, like, we're not a big population as Mauritius. So imagine if someone said to you like, you can't ever go back. Like, how, and you like, your home doesn't exist, you never existed. What the hell? It just didn't make sense to me.
The more and more you go into it, the kind of worse it is, because like you said, Hans, the reason they picked the island is because it's not a large population. But I'm going to cover this in an infographic soon, hopefully. But they had another option for another island, but because it's kind of habited by endangered sea turtles, they didn't want to face kind of backlash from environmental activists.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Chagos was a kind of another option for them.
That is actually...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that.
The more you read into it. So I'm reading a book at the moment called Island of Shame by David Vine. I thoroughly recommend it. It takes a while to get through, but it covers the whole thing in quite immense detail with loads of good stuff. So yeah, and it kind of details the whole kind of, it's called the strategic island concept basically. So the US, because they face kind of the threat of China, are looking to kind of have military bases all around the world to cover their back. The US have 4,000 military bases around the world.
4,000?
Yeah. One of them being Diego Garcia. So
yeah,
you know, not is known about that. So David Vine's book kind of covers that in a lot of detail. And I'm just reading through it now, but I'm going to the part where they talk about how they exiled the Chagosians, and then hopefully I can do an infographic for you all.
Oh, that would be amazing.
You know what actually boils my blood? Like, I remember when Instagram first came up and I actually typed in the hashtag or the location, and it comes up with people chilling on the beach, like a few here and there. And I'm like, and you won't even let the people who are from there go back. Like, oh my God, it just
there's all kind of rumors, like I don't know how true they are, but you know, there's kind of like really great facilities for the people who are working there because they're military personnel. And there's kind of, you know, like fast food chains and whatever for them. I don't know how true that is though, so don't take it for gospel. I've also heard, I don't know how true it is, that they kind of import workers in, I think from, I'm not sure, I think it's Thailand. So to kind of the kind of maintenance, cleaning, cooking. So yes, a secret operation, don't know what happens there, but
that is crazy. And I should say that everything we're mentioning right now, will be good to sort of have all that information. So then what we'll do is like put it in the notes. So if anyone listening wants to learn more, they can do that.
Yeah, cool, definitely. And I'll point them to my page, and I always have sources down there. So if you want to do your own reading, then definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so much more to read up on this that will kind of put everything and link everything. So Nadia, how do you keep in touch with like the developments regarding the Chagos Islands? And how do you, like, have you spoken to anyone from charities or anything like that?
I would like to engage more with people from charities just to kind of find out a bit more. an easy thing to do is just Google Chagos in Google and then hit news, and then the latest things will come up about it, and then you can kind of set a notification to ping up. And then if a big piece of news happens, kind of like yesterday, what happened with the Tribunal of the Land Law of Sea, so they kind of said again for God knows how many times that the occupation that the UK have is illegal, and they need to decolonise immediately. So the kind of new ruling they've passed will, I think, give Mauritius kind of jurisdiction, to kind of set different maritime borders. So that might include the Chagos Islands. So I'm still unsure of that. So it's something, again, I need to research. But apart from that, I have a few books. I think what I'd love to do, as soon as the borders open, I can go back to Mauritius, just go to the Mauritian bookshops, because that's where you get the good stuff, like all the good books. But apart from that, just kind of order books online where I see them, but they're really expensive. So just speak to as many different people as I can. Luckily, through Satini Coco, I've met such amazing people who have pointed me towards good resources. So that's another good way I've been able to keep up to date with everything.
And like for the resources that you found, how do you know, like, credibility? I mean, like, how do you judge that?
Yeah. Well, credibility is a big one. If it's in a book as opposed to on the internet, then I think I give it personally a high credibility score, because if it's gone through the effort of being written and published, then surely you'd know it's more credible, especially if it's got a list of sources at the back that you can refer to. On the internet, whenever I list something that's on the internet, I try to verify it by making sure that 2 or other 3 places have said the same thing or a similar thing. If it's just a kind of lone internet page that I've never seen before, then I will never add it to the source. So, for example, in Mauritius, I only use the main news outlets, which are like L'Express, Défi Media, Le Mauritian. Well, those are the only 3 anyway. But so if another kind of rogue page has said something, I try not to include it. It is difficult sometimes because like, a lot of information out there as it is. So you just got to make do with what you have. It's kind of just using common sense as well.
The next thing I really wanted to talk about is just your Mauritian identity. So I think I just wanted to know from your perspective what it's been like growing up, and then moving back, or was it for quite a few years? Born
and brought up here in London, in East London. Growing up as a Mauritian was not weird, but different. I think as a kid, you don't understand it as well. Like, I think as a kid, you're automatically placed into kind of either Indian or somewhere in Africa, but it's usually kind of South Asian you're placed into, depending on how you look. Mainly, so someone who doesn't look typically South Asian will probably be placed into a different category. But I felt like growing, like, your Mauritian identity was always kind of reduced because no one really knew Mauritius or what it was about. Like, I posted that meme the other day from that guy on Twitter who said, I don't believe Mauritian people are real, I believe they're just an illusion because I've never actually met anyone from Mauritius. It was very much like that, kind of, you're just put into a different category. And then I only really became properly in touch with my Mauritian roots, I think, when I moved there. So I moved over there as a teenager, and that's when obviously I lived there, went to school there, spent the rest of my teenage years there. So that's when I really became in touch with it. And then moving back to England afterwards, kind of vowed not to be reduced as anything else, because Mauritius is a whole different melting pot of so many other cultures, and it's so different to like, what is African culture. Africa is not a country, it's a continent made up of so many different
yes
how do you even reduce that?
Yeah, and even in an African country there's so many tribes or different and like even Mauritius, like the north of Mauritius is completely different from the south, and the east is different to the west. So how do you can't really quantify that. So growing up was kind of hard, but I'm definitely more comfortable in my...
I was going to say, too, a big part, I think, of growing up is, well, for me personally, was, like you said, making that decision not to be reduced by my identity. Because I think, because, like you said, where people are so used to putting us in boxes, we feel like we need to fit a box. But it's really difficult to do that when you're Mauritian, because how do you explain, oh, you're African, but you're also... you know, like you're Indo-Mauritian, and you also speak French. So it's really like, there is no box for that. Right, so I think understanding, you know what, it's fine to not fit into a box, because...
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing trying to understand it yourself.
Honestly,
and then telling other people, and they're like, oh, I thought, and then you're like, especially when you explain to them where Mauritius is, and they're like, oh yeah, Madagascar, the movie.
Yeah, honestly, that's what it becomes, that's what it gets reduced to.
Or the other thing is they know it as like Mauritius, the paradise, which I want to go on to a bit later on. But what was that sort of culture difference like when you moved back because you moved back as a teenager, and you know you spent quite a bit of years here, and how was that different?
It is different, not gonna lie. I think growing up in England, when you go to Mauritius, like you say, you go on holiday for 2 or 3 weeks, you know, it's all fun and games, you see your family, you go to the beach, you climb a mountain, you have nice food, and then you come home. So to live, it's true though, that's what it is. That's what
yeah.
Going to live there was definitely, I kind of knew what to expect to a certain extent, but living somewhere and going on holiday is completely different. Yeah, you've got to have a routine, you know, you go to school, you've got homework to do after school, it's not all fun and games at the beach. So it was different, but it was good different. I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me in my life living there. And I was able to really get in touch with my culture, with my roots. I was able to meet so many different people from around the world who I'm still best friends with now, and just like my kind of learning experience. So things like learning about slavery was a different take to what I'd learned in school in England. You know, had I not moved to Mauritius, I probably wouldn't be fluent in French now. So, you know, all these different things that I picked up and learned thanks to living there. So it is a different experience, but definitely a good one. And then, then I came back to England.
Did it ever cause any, I guess, confusion for you, or did it actually make things clearer going back?
It definitely made things clearer. I think I can't say now as an adult, but I think had I not had that experience, I still probably not would have been confused, but still maybe unsure about my identity. Whereas now I'm more sure, and I'm definitely more patient about explaining it to people. Whereas before it'd kind of be frustrating to try, like you say, Max, try to explain it when you don't understand it yourself. So you just kind of sit and say, yeah, you're African, or yeah, you're Indian, or whatever. But now, like, I'll fully sit down with you for an hour and tell you about it and draw like a pie chart and a diagram.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Yeah, because it's more important now, I guess, because it did help clarify things and help me understand things a bit better. So, yeah.
So since you've had the experience of both, I guess, here and back home, what's been your experience like with the education system back home and here?
I think it's different. So I went to international school in Mauritius. Don't know what the experience would have been like had I gone to a state school. Even going to an international school, I kind of learned things, like I said, about the history of the island, and things in general, like slavery, which you didn't learn about here. So when I think about learning about slavery in like year 8 or year 9 here, before I moved to Mauritius, I kind of remember it being, you know, like the British Empire, you know, they earned a third of the world, and this was the benefits of, you know, colonialism. We got all these
they literally glorify it.
Yeah, and then in Mauritius, you're kind of marched up Lemore Mountain and you're told, right, so this is where the slaves jumped off because they didn't want to, you know, be slaves anymore. So you get perspective of it. So yeah,
very real.
And you're kind of reminded, being on the island, you're kind of reminded about slavery all the time, you know, things like the sugarcane, which are everlasting, you know, they're kind of a direct, consequence of slavery and colonialism.
Yeah.
Sugarcane is the majority of the island now.
Yeah, that's actually true. It's kind of everywhere. And the next thing I wanted to move on to is, what do you think are some misconceptions? Because I'm pretty sure through the page you've spoken to a lot of people, and I recently saw you actually recommended Mauritian food to another YouTuber, right, to try it or something like that. So what are some misconceptions that people have had about Mauritius in general that you've come across?
I think as a non-Mauritian, I think one of the big misconceptions about the island is just that it's just this idyllic paradise island, which it is. Don't get me wrong, Mauritius is a beautiful island, but I think, again, it comes to kind of being reduced to just that. But what kind of riles me is when people tell me they're going to Mauritius and I just know for a fact they're just going to sit in their resort for 2 weeks and not do anything else. They're going to go on the south of the island, they're just going to stay there and not do anything, when the island has so much to offer. And what riles me even more is they're going to go to their little resort on the south of the island, but then not go 2 minutes down the road where people live in extreme poverty. I think sometimes the narrative that Mauritius has, through no fault of its own, because it is a beautiful island, but I think sometimes, again, it's trying to get a wider perspective. If you're only looking at certain things, like certain tourism pages about Mauritius, you're only going to see the good bits, right? You're never going to see poverty or, you know, the pollution, which I think Mauritius is getting a lot better on now. There's like loads of like groups and charities which are doing a lot more about the kind of pollution and stuff on the island. So I think that's like every country that does have its kind of misconceptions. So I mean, look at England, for example, meant to be one of the richest countries in the world, but we can't feed So
Yeah.
I think every country has that.
Yeah, like you said, it's true. And I think it's important for us to sort of look into. I think I've been, guilty of not looking into like the bad parts, not bad parts, like the other side of Mauritius. But it is hard, like you said, like because we're here, so we're not really in touch with that part of Mauritius. But it is something I do need to actively sort of look into and be more aware of.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like it's one of those things, like in terms of the poverty, like I only remember seeing it because we just happened to drive there once, and I asked my dad, like, what are all these kind of like corrugated like metal sheets like all around these beaches? And he's like, those are people's homes.
Yeah.
Young at the time. So, unless you're exposed to it to even ask, how would you know?
Yeah.
So that's another purpose of the page, is to kind of just share that, like, what's out there.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience, but I had a colleague who went to Mauritius, and I was like, oh, I'm Mauritian too. Like, obviously, like whenever someone says to me they've gone to Mauritius or they're Mauritian, my hype level just goes up. Anyway, and he was like, but this is the thing, he like really enjoys traveling. He's quite, bit of a traveler. And he was saying to me how when he went there, he kept on asking everyone at the hotel for like local food, just everything local, and all they would be doing is taking him to like the most expensive places, basically being ripped off. And I just felt so bad, because I was just like, there are people who actually want to go and experience the culture, and they like, we have so much to offer that like I feel like 100%. Maybe the tourist industry shouldn't really be taking people to rip them off in that kind of way, because it just sets a bad example. Honestly. I know it's not everyone, but then when I'm hyping up, like Daiquiri on the road or something, it just doesn't make sense, because he had to pay like, an extortionate amount for like one thing. And the reason why he said to me was, he was like, I just knew this isn't something the locals would buy, because it just didn't make sense in terms of their currency. Yeah. And it's like, oh God, why? Because I really wish I could have just taken you there to show you how amazing it is.
That's true though, Hans. But the thing is, not everyone thinks like your colleague. Like some people are more than happy to like just go and sit on the beach for 2 weeks and just, it's their holiday.
True.
It is meant to be a kind of, long haul luxury destination. So I get it. If you're spending a lot of money to go there and that's what you want to do, then fine. Yeah. I think as Mauritians, I think we just feel it's a massive injustice to our island, don't we? Because, we do know there's so much more to offer.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that like how we experience, I really wish that like tourist industry took more pride, I guess, in our culture and just tried to show that more. I think they do try to do it, but it's a very, I don't know.
I think it's just, it depends. It depends on the people. And it'll help if you know someone.
Yeah, definitely. Because when I think about it, even when I go to Mauritius, it's an experience for myself. Like, I've got family and all of that, but it's still like an experience for anyone and everyone, pretty much. But maybe I'm just being biased because I'm Mauritian, so I don't know.
But you're saying that there's no, I was gonna say like you're saying that side, but then I've heard from Mauritians themselves when they go to so like beach resorts in Mauritius, they're what's it called? They're not as well treated as foreigners.
Right, this is what riles me, because when I see on these Mauritian pages, when they post and they show, I'll just say it, I'm going to say it, when they show like beautiful white people on the beach, and when you see a Mauritian person or person of colour, they're always kind of in a position of servitude. They're always like welcoming you at the door with a cocktail, or they're the chef, or they're the person carrying your luggage in. So they really need to kind of look at how they represent things, because we know as a Mauritian of colour, if you go to a hotel, you're not treated as well as
unless you know someone who works there.
Exactly.
Then you're not treated as well.
That is so true. I think, do you know what? I don't even think it's just in the hotel industry. I think Mauritius generally has this big thing of, if you know someone, you're treated so much better. Like the whole country works on network and context. And the sad part is, sorry, this is so relevant, but it's so bad when it comes to like hospital treatment, because you know for a fact that if you don't know someone, you don't know a doctor, you're most likely not going to get the same treatment, which is maybe it's just my experience, and other people don't experience this, but it's so true. Like, I know that whenever we have a Mauritian friend here who's got a family back home in a hospital, the first thing they'll do is start calling around here to say, do you know someone? That's just so sad, because what if you don't know anyone? So this whole country is like, it's just kind of like, if you don't have contacts, you're really left behind. You don't have backing, you're really left behind. But I don't know, maybe that's just what I've seen. So it's very obviously limited, but yeah, it's just sad. Like you said, if you know someone, you'll get like amazing treatment, but if you don't, then you're kind of left behind.
That is quite shocking to hear sometimes.
Oh God, I always feel really bad whenever I talk trash about Mauritius, but the thing is, it's not in a way of like, oh, I'm trying to put it down. It's like in a way of like, I really want things to be better because it's such an amazing country.
Exactly.
So, and I know the value of it, but I'm like, I don't want to, do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I think when you said, Mags, about perception, I think that's another thing, like, is kind of, we're sometimes still stuck in that kind of old school mindset of how things work. But I think with the kind of the new generation, as things change, you know, that will kind of hopefully fade away.
We were talking about to our team members, the Zoli Mamsel team members, and one of the girls, she's a international student at UE at the moment, and she was saying like the movement right now within like the young people is moving at a really like fast pace. So I do have hopes. I hope that, you know, we're moving into like a better, more open society, and well, like you said, Mauritius is still very much like backward minded. So I think we're in a good position. I think we're just we're just gonna have to see it out.
Yeah, I think with this kind of like more modern mindset, if you're saying, like your friend's saying, kind of the movement is going, I think for Mauritians abroad and Mauritians on the island themselves, who are probably closer to it, that will change in a few years, hopefully.
Speak about melting pot, but I think it's not just in terms of culture, religion, or anything like that. I think even in terms of mindset, like you always have polar opposites. Like you have some people who are just, like think very, very differently, but it's really a melting pot in terms of opinions as well. You have really progressive people, and then you also have some people who, the polar opposite. But yeah, definitely a melting pot in all sense, I think.
I guess that's how you learn as well, because, if you're just an echo chamber of everyone the same, nothing will ever happen. If you get different points of view and different perspectives on things, you can kind of take them on board, learn from them, make a judgment on them.
What has been the most surprising thing that's happened since you started your page? I just jumped completely back to the page, but yeah.
Hands down, it's definitely been meeting all the different people. Like, I wouldn't have met you guys if I hadn't started the page. So it's definitely meeting all the people. Like, I just started it, I won't lie, I kind of started it for fun just to see where it would go. But to have all messages of people saying, they really relate to it, or they've learned something new, it's just been such a highlight and a reaction that I didn't actually think would happen. I thought I'd get a few likes here and there, but I didn't actually think people would say, I relate to this so much. And that's making me really happy, because that's what I want. I want people to be able to have a safe space where they can, relate and meet other Mauritians. I met so many great people off the page. So yeah, it's definitely been a highlight. I just want to meet them in person after COVID.
Yeah, no,
definitely.
Yeah, because I was going to say, we live so close, like.
And we wouldn't have known that had it not been for our pages.
Exactly. And I was going to say, you're also breaking down the Mauritian mindset of, because I think me and Has sort of talk about this. Sometimes people say it like, avoid Mauritians, but it's like, have you not? Oh, like we've had that.
Really? From who?
So when we both went to uni, I really wanted my Mauritian identity. Like, I really wanted to explore it. So I grew up in a really white area, like where I lived. So when I meet Mauritian people, for me, it's just like click kind of thing. But it's not like that for everyone.
A lot of people feel that way, so I think that's completely normal.
But not a lot of people feel like that. And when we went to uni, we realized it's very, very divided. Like, some people don't want anything to do with Mauritian people, other Mauritian people, because one, they might have misconceptions about Mauritian people, or I heard this other thing, which I think is quite interesting. I've been with Mauritian people all my life, therefore I don't want to get to know more Mauritian people. I want to have a different experience, which was quite fair. Okay.
Fair enough,
But so many things, and when I told my parents, they were a bit like, why are you getting yourself involved? Because they just realized how some people will want to be friends with you, and other people just won't. Sometimes I've had experiences with my parents where we've gone to the shops and you hear someone speak Creole, the moment you turn around and you look at them, they just don't want to talk, like they don't want to engage.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of experience like they don't want to engage, and I'm just a bit like, okay. So it makes you a bit like you never know how to approach someone when they're Mauritian.
Put it that way, because sometimes like the older generations, and they just make friends with everyone they see on the road. So sometimes they'll clock someone who speaks Creole, like their ears will prick up, and then they're best friends. But then I get that sometimes now you said it, I can actually think of a couple of times where they just don't want to.
Yeah.
They don't want to engage with Mauritians, or do you think it's because of like stranger danger?
I don't think it's stranger danger.
Yeah, no, I think it's
because if you're in a shop, you're buying vegetables, like like how, I don't know, if it's just one-on-one, okay, fair enough. And it's like a whole family, I don't know.
Yeah, and because they know you're Mauritian as well, like you can clock that.
Yeah, you can clock. Yeah, that's the thing.
You can clock that. Yeah.
But that's the thing. I think like our pages, like even your page, is really changing that narrative. It's actually bringing people together, I would say, or a lot more. And I think it's bringing people together for the right reasons. Like, it's like educating people, and like it's actually making us have more connection, I would say, back to the stories in Mauritius and keeping us up to date with what's going on. So
that's the main aim of the pages, right? So if like one person meets someone else who can then relate to, or one person knows something new about the island they didn't know, then I think hopefully we're on the right track.
Yeah, no, definitely. But that's what that was my point. Like, I think, you're doing a great job sort of connecting Mauritians and creating a safe space, like you said, because, all the memes and stuff, like we can all, that's the one thing that's like, it baffles me, like why we have this misconception, because it's like we all have those things in common. Yeah, you get what I mean? Like the jokes, it's the same, as in obviously
related ones, they get like the most engagement. So
yeah, exactly.
Food.
Yeah, which shows that we're all on the same page.
So what are some topics you're currently working on for like on the page, or what are some exciting things? I know obviously you want to try to keep as much of it secret, but like where do you hope the page takes you pretty much?
Well, it's kind of, for lack of a better word, nice where the page is now, because it's a small-ish community. I kind of know a few people personally, so I'd love the page to grow, but I still want to be able to keep that personal touch with people, because it's been nice being able to like DM people one-on-one and seeing like regular people who engage. So that's been really nice to see. So I do hope the page grows, just because I want it to reach people. Some people who have said they felt a bit kind of isolated before they interacted with the page, and then met other people who feel the same way as them. So I would want it to grow for that reason. I'm working on something really exciting for March. I can't talk on now. Just keep an eye on the page, keep an eye on stories, and all shall be revealed. I'm gassing it, making it sound really great. It's probably just whatever, but
no, like we're excited.
Hopefully it's something fun. And then I'm working on a few interesting topics. So one that should be out in February is around the Mauritian riots. So you guys know the singer Kaya.
Yeah.
So it'll be about him and the kind of riots. It'll be the anniversary of the riots in February. And then I've also recently found out that, did you know Mauritius has a Jewish cemetery?
Oh, no.
I didn't.
Do you know kind of the history behind it?
No, I didn't even know there was one.
It's in Bubasa, in a really brief nutshell.
Oh, that's why my hometown.
Well, in a really brief nutshell, so during colonialism, guess where this is going, and the whole thing about annexing Palestine and everything that's going on with Israel-Palestine. So during that time, the British sent loads of Jewish detainees to live in a camp in Mauritius. So for, I think 4 to 5 years, there were kind of all these like Jewish people who weren't allowed into, because at the time it was Palestine, because it was the British mandate of Palestine. So, but yeah, everywhere the British people go, like something just seems to happen.
For sure.
They didn't know where to kind of put these kind of Jewish asylum seekers at the time, refugees. Put them. They were like, okay, let's shift them off to one of our colonies. We can't send them to Trinidad because of this. We can't send them to Jamaica because of that. Let's put them in Mauritius. So they built a kind of camp in Bubasa. And these people there for 5 years. So obviously, some of them died, which is why there's a cemetery there.
But are there any like Jews in Mauritius now, or?
That's what I'm trying to look into. I don't think so at the moment. Bar mitzvah was like in the year 2000 or something. So I don't know if there is.
That is so interesting.
So I'd like to find that out, but I don't even know how to go about finding that out. So looking into that at the moment. So hopefully when I get all the proper information and some good sources, that'll be on there soon.
But Nadia, how do you come across these things? Is it just from what people say to you and it just kind of clicks and you go off with it? Or how do these things come up?
When I research things, I kind of get into a wormhole and find out other things.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was researching about Mauritius, and then I found this completely separate topic. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then later I'm like, right, I need to write something on this. So it kind of goes on a tangent. But I've got a little book which I write everything in, so I don't kind of forget.
Do you ever find it overwhelming running the page?
I don't find it overwhelming. I like doing it. It is of mine. I just kind of want to get it right for people. So I sometimes worry that I'm not getting an infographic out every week or something, but then I'd rather get something out that's quality, that actually helps people. And if they have to wait a month, then I'm sorry. So it's not overwhelming as such. I just want to make sure it's kind of a good standard and of good quality.
Yeah, definitely.
What about you guys? How do you find running a page, like on top of the day job, on top of everything else?
Yeah, no, like you said, it's definitely tricky, and like we're still trying to find our feet as well, and and the balance, and because we have other team members as well, so it's like working around all our timetables, because we have like team meetings every week. But it's definitely, but because it's something we enjoy, so it's like we just make the most out of it.
That's the thing. If you enjoy it, it doesn't feel like work, does it?
Yeah. So yeah, we do the best that we can.
Yeah.
And like you said, like sometimes we do have, worry we're not doing the right things, but we can only do so much. And as long as, people are related to the stories and finding, a safe space, that's our aim basically.
I realised from like previous like extracurricular activities or whatever, I've just realised I've stopped doing things to kind of please people. I know it's a page for people and like obviously your audience matters, but if I enjoy it, I kind of try to focus on that more. That makes sense. Like if I'm enjoying doing the podcast, for example, I'm just hoping someone out there will enjoy it too, like will enjoy listening to it.
Yeah.
Because I'm having a good time. So
yeah, that's right. And I think, you can't force it. If you're, like you say, if you're being true to yourself and you're enjoying it, then people will relate to it because of who you are, not because you're trying to be something else or trying to please them.
Like, for example, like we love doing these conversations because we learn so much,
honestly.
Yeah, and it's just like a chat amongst mates, isn't it? So hopefully if we're feeling the same way, then someone else is. So yeah,
and they can learn something new as well, and sort of and spark conversations within their friends or families.
I always think like having conversations is the best way to kind of expand on your knowledge.
Definitely.
Because you just never know what someone will say to you. Like you just said about the cemetery, like I had no idea. Do you know what I mean? Even a book, I probably wouldn't have found that.
My hometown in Mauritius.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, even like, I didn't know anything about it till like a month ago when I suddenly came across it. And then this is the thing, so I stumbled across like a web page and I'm like, well, how credible is this web page now? So now I need to try and find out a bit more. So that's why it does sometimes get a bit difficult. But you learn things by meeting other people. So encourage diverse conversation and diverse friendship.
Nadia, final few questions. This has been a really great conversation. Honestly, we've loved having you. What's your favourite quote or something that you live by or something that's recently come to you?
I always stick by that Confucius quote, like find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
I like that.
I think that kind of relates to our pages.
Yeah.
For sure.
Definitely.
Well, you will work. There'll be some days where it's difficult, but the passion drives you.
Yeah, that's it.
But great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on, Nadia, especially at this time of day. Thank you so much.
Really, really good. It's been a great conversation, and I've learned from you guys just as much. So
Thank you for listening to this episode.
We hope you enjoyed our content. You can reach out to us on Instagram at zodi.mamzel and keep up to date with our latest adventures.
Wishing you a wonderful day. Here's to you keeping your head up and winning. Lots of love, Zoli Mamzel.